Welcome to The Call to Rise, the podcast for sacred rebels, visionaries, and conscious changemakers. Here we sit down with the people birthing the new earth, weaving ancient wisdom with modern strategy to build movements that heal, transform, and uplift our world. I'm Makenzie Darling, your host, inviting you into honest conversations, practical tools, and hard-won wisdom to awaken your power and to inspire you to answer the call to rise and to meet this moment in history. Welcome, everyone. My name's Makenzie Darling. I'm the host of The Call to Rise, and today we have an incredibly special guest. I like to call her Magical Mags, but she's also known as Misty Magdalena Grace, and hopefully we'll get to the point in the story where we can hear why she chose that amazing name. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have you.
Yeah, me too. So much fun.
We got connected about a month or so ago and really had that ancestral pain to power, working with different entrepreneurial people to bring their gifts. Before we dive into things, I'd love you to introduce yourself and your work to my listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I might even borrow a page from your book. We're like sisters from another mister, right?
Yes, we are.
I love that you call yourself Ancestral Alchemist. So fun having you on my show. I do call myself an alchemist and soul liberation guide. I've had 25 years of working for myself. I always say I'm so unemployable. The last job I had, I got fired and I loved every second of it. And I've only had like 2 or 3 jobs my whole adult life. So I was born to be an entrepreneur, and I've had many different hats though in that journey. I've coached now over 20,000 people in health and fitness, nutrition, and now medicine work. And then the other side of my, I guess we'll call it the masculine, was sales and like time management and productivity coaching. And so you can about imagine the journey I've had. To keep a really long story short, in 2020, I hit my own version of rock bottom. Like, why the fuck am I here? Why am I even alive? Drawing breath right now because I found myself a closet alcoholic, unhappily married, feeling like a worthless mom. And I was making tons of money, like 20 to 40 grand a month in the midst of a pandemic. Oh, by the way. And I had the email list, I had the podcast, I looked really shiny and good on the paper and, on camera, but I was dying inside. And I had a mentor come into my life and he said, hey, you're supposed to live, you have a purpose, and you just got to heal. And he didn't say anything about ancestral stuff. He was a psychic channel and just said, hey, go play with psilocybin and ayahuasca. And living in Southern California, there's no shortage of that. So I called up my mushroom shaman and I'm like, dude, I'm supposed to heal. And he actually started opening the door to ancestors. He said, oh, by the way, your ancestors are blocking you. This was after a few sits, and I had, I've lost 13 friends to suicide, my brother, and so many to alcoholism. And, I have so much death in my life that when he said that, I was like, well, what does that even mean? And he didn't really give me an answer. And 6 months later is when I really started communicating with my ancestors, wise and healed. And they came to me and said, thank you so much for signing up, for being the black sheep, the cycle breaker, as you and I like to call ourselves now, change makers, revolutionary women who chose these carnations and these families of origin with lots of fear, guilt, shame, abandonment, and they just didn't have the tools. And so they told me many times now, I commune with them daily, but that first sit with them where they finally showed up and said, all right, you can let that shit go and heal for us, for your children, for the collective. And so I took it really seriously, and it gave me purpose, and it definitely made sense why, I had so many friends die. I had so much addiction that ran in the family, autoimmune disease, throat disease, that every baby girl on my dad's side and each sibling of his had it, and then divorce. I got divorced last year, and, quote unquote, divorce shame and guilt ran in my family, like all of these things that I was running from. But I had chosen in this body to say, enough is enough. Let's let that go and let's heal. And now my kids are thriving. I'm so grateful for grief. I called myself, I went from divorce to deliverance. I feel so amazing. And now I'm stepping into helping heal and hold space for a lot of heavy shit out there right now on the planet. And, when you and I met, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're going to have some fun together, because I feel like so many of us light workers, healers, cycle breakers, whatever you want to call us, are here to alchemize all of that stuff in this divine feminine awakening and rebirthing of the planet.
Amen, amen, amen. I am totally behind everything that you just said. Yes, 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 yes. And I just want to applaud you for all of the important work that you've done. It's been so exciting, even being like on Instagram and these different channels, seeing all this feminine rising, these like revolutionaries ready to come for the year of the fire horse. Like, you can feel it, like it's palatable. And I want to double click on the word that you used, which was responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really, really, really big and important word, especially for cycle breakers, because as you alluded to, like in your bones and your very DNA, when you started connecting, realizing that you were the chosen one to end that cycle. And with that comes responsibility. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it makes me think of Spider-Man, right? Isn't it? It was a Spider-Man where he says, to whom much power comes great responsibility or whatever. For me, what I discovered, and now I really work with this on my clients because it's so prevalent on our planet and society right now, is I was really operating from an unconscious victim mentality. And woe is me, like all of this stuff, right? And the guilt, the shame, the fear. And then when my ancestors showed me, why I chose it, even why as a woman, healing my matriarchy and all of the things that women have been, burned at the stake for, beaten into submission, raped and pillaged over, it was sobering to be like, oh, wait, this is my karma that becomes my dharma. Okay, I get it. Over time, of course, it didn't happen like that overnight where I became so accepting, but to embrace it and know that it's my personal, and I say radical responsibility to allow the healing to come through my body, because there's a lot of somatic release, purging, all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it was, again, that unconscious victim wounding, which is, again, on our planet. Everybody has it, whether they like to admit it or not. Once I recognize that, then I was able to alchemize the victim into the heroine journey at a much deeper level. But it was a look in the mirror. Like I had to recognize or recognize, as I like to say, that holy shit, like no one's going to do this for me. Not the government, not the church, not my ex-husband or husband at the time. It was like, we all come into these bodies. Our soul comes in. We're born naked, we die naked, and it's really the years between the dash that it's all up to us. If it's to be, it's up to me. And the mirror of all of the stuff out there in the 3D world is really a game, my mentor called it, or a movie, The Matrix. But it's still our soul's journey to go from that victim to hero. And it goes back to your question about responsibility.
There's a big difference between the people that are the victims that are like, everything's happening to me, as opposed to everything's happening for me. And your entire world can completely shift when you have just that, 2% difference. So I really, I really understand that there for sure. I want to go into your ancestral story. Like, how did you reconnect with your ancestors? And can you give some practices for the listeners, especially those change makers that, again, are taking on that big responsibility of duty and can connect more with their ancestral realm that they may not be so tapped into yet?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't have the books handy, but there's a couple of great books that I might give you to throw in the show notes too that could also help them with ancestral veneration and daily communion and practice. But the way, again, a snapshot, because it's a long story, but the snapshot is, when that shaman told me, by the way, your ancestors are blocking you, but he said nothing else. It planted a seed of curiosity, doubt, and quite honestly, what the fuck? What does he mean by that? And because I never, before 2021, I was a little bit into like DNA testing. I was a little bit into, my dad's side's from Germany, my mom's side from the Netherlands, and okay. And I had some family history and an aunt who was into the whole genealogy thing. But other than that, I just want to give you context. I didn't really have this concept of what is ancestors or ancestral trauma. And 6 months after he said that to me, all of a sudden, I started having really intense dreams. And this was leading up to an ayahuasca ceremony. And not that you have to do plant medicine. I do believe, though, when you're in the space with medicine and your intention is to go in and commune with your ancestors, magic happens. And my ancestors were calling me to go sit with ayahuasca to have that breakthrough experience, I found out later. And the week of the ceremony, I started having intense dreams of my father, my brother, people who'd all passed on. And it was really, really scary. So I called up a spiritual teacher who is a psychic channel, has been channeling all sorts of divine beings and guides and a lot of divine mother work. And I told her about the dreams, and she said, "Oh, your ancestors are calling you and I can help you." This was my father's side. So we started with the father's side, and she did what I now help my clients with, which is called a process of ancestral lineage imprint release. And so it's basically, I cut, almost like a cord cutting ceremony to keep it simple, all of the guilt, the shame, the fear, the abandonment. And that opened me up. It was like I sent a pulse out to the universe to open and heal that side. And then I did my mom's side later. And when I was sitting under the stars with ayahuasca, we had this medicine. I'm just going to show you a stick right here. Mapacho. Now that I'm a medicine woman, I work with this with my clients as well. And I received a Mapacho blessing when the ayahuasquero believed that it was the right time. And as soon as he gave me another, cup of aya and that blessing, I went and I laid down, and poof, all of the ancestors on my dad's side came in. And I do believe that that raised my vibrational frequency and consciousness and opened myself up to the multidimensionality of the portal. To then, from that day forward, after we had a conversation, me and the ancestors, like, "Can I be done with this shit now?" And they laughed at me and said, "Yes, now you understand. We're here for you. You're not alone." And so then from that day forward, I sat in meditation every morning. So this is kind of like some best tips for you all. I sat in meditation. I did microdose with psilocybin and then ayahuasca and just different things for a few months to help quiet my mind, drop into my body, my heart, and just ask them, what do I need to know? Now, my ancestors would communicate a lot through my dreams. So I'd get like dreams in the dream state and I'd wake up. Now, if you don't get, dreams and all that kind of stuff, there may be other signs. It could be animal totems. It could be songs on the radio. I have a lot of that with my family because music is one of our things for many, many lifetimes. And so I would just ask and seek and door, knock. And over time, they would bring other teachers, other opportunities. I would ask them, "Can you close doors?" That's how my divorce actually, finally, I had the courage to do that because that was one of the curses in my lineage, till death do us part, right, Makenzie? Even if you hate the other person at the end of the day, it's just what they did in the Bible, So breaking those constructs, getting connected with divine feminine and all of the other, because ancestors aren't just our blood. That could be a whole nother conversation we don't need to go into, but I started communing with all sorts of different deities, guides, even famous people like Prince and Patrick Swayze. I call them my ancestors now. They're my spirit guides. I talk to them all the time in order to just really get more clarity about what am I doing on this planet and give me direction. And so that daily meditation, and then I have an altar. I have it set up very specifically with different elements. I serve them mead. Sometimes I serve them coffee every day, sometimes a shot of whiskey. I have my mom's ashes on there and all sorts of different energies. And I tune in with them every single day and pay my respects every single day. And so those are like the quickest downloads to share how I physically, but also spiritually commune with them.
Oh man, you are so my people. I resonated with every single thing that you just said. I want to chat about the dreams really quickly because back in indigenous cultures have been telling this forever, that's how they commune with their ancestors. And when I first started learning this, I had all of my ancestors, as you said, visiting me. And I started getting deep into my Scandinavian ancestral line and learning about the different herbs that they took for different reasons. And I started taking mugworts at night and having a whole dream ritual to be communing deeper with my ancestors. Mm-hmm. And then I created an ancestral playlist of the songs that my grandmother and my great-grandmother and, people from the different countries that I came from, and then created an ancestral altar that eventually became my movement-making altar, where I then brought not only my ancestors, but also the milk lines of the different people that inspired me, just like you said. Like, our ancestors can be larger than the biological family. And Martin Luther King and Jesus actually started visiting me constantly. And I've been voraciously reading all of Martin Luther King's books and just crying and feeling it so deeply. that his words are just as magnetic and true as they were then as they are now. And so sitting at my altar and visiting with my ancestors, but then also visiting with him and receiving wisdom, because all of that lives within the field.
1,000%. Yeah. Beautiful.
Before we go any further, I want to speak directly to the revolutionaries that are listening. The ones who know that their lives carry a deeper purpose of service in this moment. If you can feel that you weren't meant to simply succeed inside the old systems, but to help reshape what comes next, this invitation is for you. I've created the Movement Maker Archetype Quiz, a powerful tool that reveals one of 7 leadership archetypes emerging right now to guide us through this threshold moment in history. This isn't about personality. It's about discovering your unique leadership medicine, the role you're here to play in our collective transformation. You can take the quiz at quiz.globalmovementmaker.com. That's quiz.globalmovementmaker.com. If something in you knows this moment matters, start there.
I'd love to talk a little bit about like your Scandinavian ancestry and, can you, even the horse behind you, there's a story to that. Can you share with people?
Yeah, you actually brought up one thing to segue into that. So in 2022, one of my teachers said, your Germanic background and Scandinavian background, you got to work with the runes. It wasn't, do you want to work with the runes? It was, you've got to. He got a message, and I was like, what the hell is that? And so then I found these ancient symbols predating tarot that actually came first in ancient Germany, which was where my father's side was from. These symbols are divination tools. So divination meaning we're fully human and fully divine, and divination is helping us break free from the amnesia, forgetting that we are all gods and goddesses, or whatever you want to call it, spirit, universal consciousness, all the same thing to me. So when I started studying them every day, same way I communed with my ancestors, it would help me with unconscious trauma and ancestral healing, but it would also give me answers to questions where I was just so stuck in my head that they would help me in moving through that. Along the way, I recognized that I had already been working with Mary Magdalene, hence the name Magdalena, but there was a connection with the Norse, the Vikings, and all that kind of stuff, and specifically a horse. And to keep a really long story short, again, one of my teachers said, there's someone trying to work with you. It's another guide like Mary Magdalene. And she said it starts with a letter, and it looks more like, raw kind of energy, whereas Mary Magdalene's sweeter. This is more like badass, mofo, warrior energy. And since I already had a spirit animal horse, I was like, that sounds like the Valkyrie. And she's like, yeah, that sounds right. And so that she just left me, and I did more research and have been doing a lot more research and the Viking history and all of that. And there was a goddess named Mist. And sure enough, she was, the Valkyrie that helps choose who lives or dies. And again, I have so much connection to death in my life that it was just like another, oh my gosh, this is really a part of who I am. And so I chose the name Misty, and that's the lady behind me, with the horse and the Valkyrie energy. We're entering into the year of the horse. So I know it was just like all these breadcrumbs that our ancestors and the universe leads us into. Know thyself. It's really just know thyself. We're all fractals of this collective cosmic consciousness, and we're all, sharing. We just may have different heritage and different ancestry, but this is definitely very much a part of that darker feminine. If you've ever watched Vikings Valhalla or the Valhalla series, like those women are, they're just as capable as the men to go into battle as well. And I always felt like I was one of the guys. I always felt like I was tomboy. And then it was like, oh my gosh, no wonder I chose to be raised by a single father, had an older brother who was a badass. I was always meant to be a spiritual badass. And so the Viking Valkyrie part of my ancestry really came in pretty heavily over the past 2 years. And then the only other thing I'd like to share is as I connected more with my ancestry, I started embracing the title of witch. So I do call myself a pagan witch. I'm actually studying, I don't have it with me, I'm studying the Germanic and Norse religions now. And as I became a part of these pagan groups and recognizing all of these things, all these opportunities started opening up. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of scythe magic. That's part of the ancient in Norse and Germany and all of those countries, Northern European, they had women, by the way, who led scythe, and you get into ceremony, and then the vulva, female shaman, again, vulva, only a woman, would lead. And so I was invited to host in my home a scythe ritual, and I got to sing what's known in those days and those times, Gulder, where I got to tone and sing and be channeling all of this magic. So, and that was all just because one of my teachers said, you got to start working with the runes. And it just like built this domino effect of badassery and reconnecting with my truth and what my ancestors wanted me to bring back into this timeline.
I love that so much. It's so rich. When I was younger, maybe like 5 or 6, I actually stumbled across some runes when I was traveling somewhere, and I had my dad buy them, and I found them out of nowhere about like a year or so ago. And I myself started bringing rune readings into when I was doing ceremonies with people and going deeper into that Scandinavian lineage. And it was interesting, you talk about the badass women, and part of my unraveling of my own ancestral story within my Scandinavian line from maternal was to de-armor myself, to actually return to a softer place, because those are badass women from that Viking age, right? I had a lot of pride in that, which I still friggin' do, no doubt, but also finding that softness. I'm wondering if that was part of your journey as well through this ancestral journey you've been on.
Yeah, candidly, that's why Mary Magdalene came to me first, because I had, just like you, I had armored up because of the toxic masculine, right? The profane, wounded, toxic masculine, whatever word flows for you. I had been more of that power over greed, domination, sales. I usually at some point become kind of a gross salesperson, especially if you're surrounded by those kinds of toxic masculine people, which I attracted into my life so I could experience that and really bring it up in my shadows. And then by going through the healing process, Mary Magdalene came to me first to help me become humble, soft, understand sacred sexuality and all of that kind of stuff, because I had so much of the masculine for so long. But then, once I softened up enough after 2 years of working with Mary Magdalene and, Isis and all of that, then the Valkyrie came in and said, okay, you spend enough time over there in that soft, sweet, kind, love, light, and crystals space, which is nice. But you got to remember, you got to get to be strong as a leader. And now I'm a single mom. So now I've got to embody it. Well, and every woman deserves to. So let me take a step back. As women, we've got to embody both the feminine and the masculine inside of ourselves, that sacred union, that hieros gamos. Then you're going to have such a much better life anyway. So I just am glad that I've now found a healthier balance of the soft and the badass.
I just started reading Martin Luther King's book, Strength to Love, I believe it's called. And his first chapter is all about bringing those two energies into balance. And he talks about in the Bible how Jesus talks about the importance of the serpent and the dove. And so to have both like a discerning, hard, fine-tuned mind and then a tender heart, and be able to weave those two together. And I think in all spiritual traditions, that's what they're talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the patriarchy, right? That's the wounded, toxic, profane masculine that's been around for thousands of years. Divine feminine was sort of like burnt, kicked in the caves, kicked to the curbside, so to speak. And we all have been raised in motherless churches where it's all about the dude energy, and that wasn't the real story if you go back. And that's what I do love about like the Viking, Germanic, Scandinavian. Granted, many other traditions have both the feminine and the masculine archetypes. But when I really understood more of that, we all have mother-father wounds, right? We all have hemispheres of the brain that are completely, imbalanced because of the patriarchy. But once I really tapped into all of the different religions and all the different pantheons of gods and goddesses, because I don't just focus on Germanic or Norse. I love Isis and Osiris. I love Kali Ma and Shiva. Even the Yoruba tradition, the African. I work and play with all, because they're energies to me more than they are gods to worship. Because I I get just as much from them as I do my ancestors, and I believe they're all pretty much the same.
Every episode of the Call to Rise podcast is about the changemakers and movements reshaping our world. But the podcast is just the beginning. On my Substack, I open the door wider, sharing my personal journey with movement makers, the wins, the struggles, and the behind-the-scenes rituals that help leaders birth what's next. If you're ready to go deeper into the frameworks and practices you hear me hint at here, join me at globalmovementmaker.substack.com.
I'd love to wrap our talk up as we know we could literally, and I'll probably have to have you on again because there's just so much juiciness to be had. But I'd love for you to share with my listeners, what is the real story of Mary Magdalene? We have this feminine rising. Let's bring her in and let's tell her real story.
Yeah, and I will recommend, if anybody wants a good book, Megan Watterson's book about essentially the true story of Mary Magdalene and Christ and the real, I guess, if we want to call it Christianity, for lack of a better term, since it's more of a 3D word that's more common. So Mary Magdalene was Christ's beloved, his equal. She was also deemed the apostle of the apostles and was the leader of these 12 men, and we know that Christ was meant to be crucified. He didn't die for people's sins. He was killed as a martyr by the Romans, like some people are getting killed now because they were just good people, and he was speaking truth. He and she would go out and teach that the kingdom of heaven lies within, which again is just another way of saying you're fully human, you're fully divine. You are born in your birthday suit and you're close to God, but then the older you get, there's chakras and there's trauma and there's all these things, right, that you start to fall asleep. And so they worked with Kundalini Yoga. It's one of the reasons Mary Magdalene, she started working with me the same month I took my first Kundalini Yoga class. So she would hold space for Christ and cleanse his chakras. He would do the same. Of course, the church said, she had 7 deadly sins. Hello, 7 chakras. She's a prostitute and a whore because she had sex with Christ and they had babies. But we don't tell that side of the story, right? We just, threw her in a cave, ran her and, Mother Mary and all the good, beautiful women that were just as equal as Christ out. But they were like amazing, amazing teachers. And they, if you like to get into Carl Jung, he also edifies Kundalini Yoga, and he talks about Christ and Mary Magdalene as the hieros gamos, which is Greek for the sacred marriage, the sacred union of what we all have inside of us, which is the healthy whole feminine, the healthy whole masculine. And they simply embodied those healthy archetypes. And she was trained by Isis and that lineage and the way of the rose of coming and helping women embrace their sensuality and their wholeness as goddesses with wombs. So I got into womb magic. I got into yoni steaming and helping heal and cleanse and clear those lower 3 chakras. And women, again, this isn't a feminist statement at all, but and Christ knew this too, like we create babies inside our body. And a lot of times, unfortunately, especially when they called Mary Magdalene a prostitute and a whore, they made sex bad. They made it dirty. And again, that was part of the patriarchy's way of control, domination, and not allowing the divine feminine to rise. So that's why, she's making a comeback. And so many of us women are, calling upon her to help us heal our matriarchs, to help us heal the lies and the mistruths and help women embrace. And in a healthy way, if a woman chooses to be celibate or if a woman, is more protective of her sexuality, which I highly endorse that, by the way. That's another conversation for another day because there's so much sexual trauma on the planet. Hello, Epstein files. We won't go there. That's trying to be healed right now. So I'm really passionate, thanks to Mary Magdalene specifically, to help women reclaim their power with humility, grace, and badassery, and to honor, that hieros gamos within. That's why so many women are staying single now. So many women are wanting to reclaim their power and not, quote unquote, need a man. I love men. I can't wait to have a divine masculine partner at some point, but at the same time, to have an opportunity to date myself and understand the power that we have within both energies, the feminine and the masculine. And I call upon Christ and Magdalene every day to help me stay true to that, to be grounded and intuitively guided as a woman to really shine my light. Going back to bringing it to a close, back to your mission, change makers, that's how I can be the change I see in the world is simply by honoring the feminine and the masculine within, which again, our mother and father, they were our first examples of that energy, for better or for worse. And they didn't have the greatest examples from the Hieros. It was all part of our karma that we're healing now. And I'm so grateful to have come full circle and embrace it with gratitude and so much compassion for our lineages. Because, man, they had it really tough.
Yeah, they did. While things feel so out of control and so scary right now, our ancestors have been through big trauma and threshold moments as well, and their resilience lives within us. And I like to say that, they built the foundation for where we stand, and we have to hold both. Like, we have to hold the grief and the wounding that has been passed down and the resilience, and we're here to build the cathedral. We have the opportunity to build what they could not. And I love that you bring it right back to that ancestral piece of like where we started this conversation, because it doesn't only start in our homes from our great-great-grandparents down to individuals. You're now seeing this on a, societal level of the systems that we've built, of the soup that we live in. And so I just want to, I know this is a big can of worms that I'm opening up right at the end, but I do just want to bring in that you're going to Minneapolis for a month, and I want you to bring your voice into what you think is happening in Minneapolis and what you hope to serve during your time there.
Yeah, bless you. Thank you. I almost started crying right away just because I have so much love and compassion for them. Back when George Floyd was killed, I had lived there for 13 years. My daughter was born there, and we only left California to, in theory, save our marriage. And well, we saw how that worked because my ex hated it there. But I've always been a city of Minneapolis, huge fan, and the diversity. But a lot of Black men were starting to get killed towards the end. My husband was Black, so it was another reason we also wanted to get out of there. And so we just missed George Floyd. However, I want to say 2 years into my medicine journey, I was doing some healing, and I still actually don't remember how I ended up in Minneapolis on this journey, but I went to the intersection where George was killed, and I saw the history there of the Native Americans who were scalped and killed and just their land taken. So on that same land, and Renee Good was only a mile away. And this was my neighborhood. This is where my kids went to daycare and all this kind of stuff. So I always felt a really deep connection to Minneapolis. And so when I had that, I realized oh my gosh, there's still some wounding there, not only for George, but for me, because I was healing some of my stuff from many lifetimes in that part of the country. And so when I saw what was happening this time, it was like the instant message, when Renee was killed. And Minneapolis is they say there's a joke, if you want to test something for a business, a new concept or idea, you always go to the Midwest because they're either going to be really skeptical because there's a lot of Viking and Germanic pride there, right? They're we are the best, all of this kind of stuff. But so to have ICE and to have all this stuff, really attacking their values are so deeply entrenched in a lot of what I'm now seeing what my ancestors' values are is love thy neighbor. Hello, Christ. How do you look out for each other? And we're good people at the heart of the matter. Renee Good, her last name. I thought I saw Wicked the other day. I'm hearing Good Witch. I'm there's no accident that her last name was Good. And there's no accident, again, that this is all happening in Minneapolis. So there's a lot of many lifetimes of trauma that city is helping purge right now. I know that maybe you and I know that it is for the greater good and it is a blessing. I'm just going to throw it out there without people probably wanting to throw something at the screen right now. But Minneapolis signed up for this. And I already did, before this all went down, I had planned to go there and spend a month and understanding how much my ancestors orchestrated that because they're paralyzed by fear. There's a lot of anger, a lot of grief. the land and their ancestors are forcing them to cleanse and purge. And guess what? The top 3 things I've been working for my ancestors: fear, grief, and anger. Because how many of our European and everywhere, there's been people that come and rape and pillage and take power over. They don't care. And so for better or for worse, that's where I'm going to go in and bring in medicine and bring in sacred rage practices, bring in yoni steaming. I'm going to bring in all of the best that I can. And I'm going to go sing at their grave sites. I already have my ukulele packed. I'm going to go raise the vibration, because Minneapolis is a lot of singing has happened. There's been people coming in community, faith and clergy. Like normally Catholics and Muslims, they're probably maybe going to say hi, but they're not going to hang out. And they had 100 clergy praying of all faiths, and 100 of them got arrested, go figure. But they're all coming together for the greater good. Again, I'm overusing that word, but Renee, we got to say her name as many times as we can. And then, of course, Alex. I mean, it's just, it's a big mess, but people are standing up through sovereignty. It's a revolutionary time. Astrology is supporting this, and so I'm excited. And of course, I got to talk about Brother Prince. He always said that the revolution started in Minneapolis with his band. So there's a lot of ironic, karmic ties to all of the things that I've been shown over the last 5 years that are bringing me there.
It's going to be so powerful. And I love that you're bringing in the storytelling and the songs and the ritual and the community. All of these pieces are true movement building components, right? This is what, I often say the difference between building a business and building a movement is the business is in the head. It's the ads, it's the funnels, it's the clicks, but the movement is in the heart. It's in the people that come together under a shared value to fight for a different future. And there's nothing in the world that literally just makes my tears stroll down my face than watching, as you say, different people from different walks of life coming together and singing within ritual. There's nothing more human about that, I don't think. So.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of candles. There's been a lot of fire magic. There's people don't recognize how much our ancestors are working through all that's happening, and not that everyone gets to or needs to understand it like you and I do. However, behind every movement, I believe our ancestors are a part of that.
I just got literally full body tingles. That is 100% truth. So yes, our ancestors are behind us and rooting us on, and we're rooting you on as you go to Minneapolis. Please, please, please share how people can get a hold of you, maybe help support you within Minneapolis, and start working your amazing work with you.
Yeah, I would love that. Actually, thank you. If I may, MagdalenaGrace.com is my catch-all link tree. It has my schedule for what I'm doing while I'm in Minneapolis. I never officially started my nonprofit, so full disclosure, you'll even see donation down there. If anybody donates to the nonprofit link that I have on there, I will utilize that for scholarship money to go towards, any of the impacted local immigrants, any of the impacted local Native Americans, and anybody else that I find. I'm just going to go walk around and see who's ready for healing. And obviously I do get to make money while I'm there, but if I can offer up scholarships in kind, then you never know whose life you might impact. So just also email me at info@magdalenagrace.com or go to magdalenagrace.com and reach out to me, and we can figure out other ways of when I'm on the ground, especially. I won't know till I get there of all the things, but I have friends, just really quickly, who their lives were one day this way, regular job, and now every day from sun up till sundown, they're bringing groceries to people, they're driving people around, their small businesses are shut down and their livelihoods shut down. So I don't know exactly what I'll be walking into and how to help them until I get there. So just reach out to me either way.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing, for offering your heart to the world. We need it now more than ever. So grateful to be in your presence, to be a new friend and hopefully collaborator. And thank you everyone for listening. Hope you really enjoyed this time with Magical Mags, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Call to Rise. If today's conversation stirred something in you, subscribe, and share it with a fellow movement maker. And join our community at globalmovementmaker.com. Till next time, keep leading with courage, keep weaving ancient wisdom with modern strategy, and always remember to answer the call.